Would you describe yourself as racist?
I don't think so.
Racist.
I'm not racist.
You're not racist.
No, I'm not.
In Singapore, different races lived peacefully together. That's because we've always been careful when dealing with race relations.
Our harmony so far has been easy harmony. We don't really want to talk about it.
Has anyone ever been offended in your show?
I'm sure they have. The truth hurts.
Janil Puthucheary, chairman of Onepeople.sg, the body that promotes racial harmony in Singapore, is going on a journey to find out
When I got married, first thing people asked, make sure you don't beat up your wife. Again.
where we stand on race relations.
Does it matter to you what race I am?
Do you think there's racism directed against the Malays?
From conducting one of the largest nationwide surveys
Your friends in conversation have used the words "you people," meaning your whole race.
to having difficult conversations,
So they make racist jokes about you?
Yeah, definitely.
this documentary finds out why it's time we start talking about race.
Do you think we'll ever get to a truly harmonious society? What does it mean, regardless of race, language, or religion? In those few words, those 6 words, are captured thousands of years of history, hundreds of wars, conflicts, of blood shed between our races. We don't ignore all of this. We don't pretend it doesn't exist. I'm Janil Puthucheary. I know what you're thinking. Racial harmony and me, how can we have an open, honest conversation? But for the next hour, I'm going to talk about something we rarely talk about on television: race. I'm going to confront what people are not willing to say about it. Because it's time we examine who we really are. I'll be speaking to many Singaporeans to find out their opinion. And I'm starting with the most racist person I can think of. Stand-up comedian Kumar.
The minorities are suffering. Even Indians are suffering. After 10:30 cannot drink. Then all the Indians don't know what to do. They walk around the block. They're like,
Hi Kumar, how are you?
I'm good.
Are you racist?
No,
You don't think your jokes are racist?
my jokes are not racist. As long as you make fun of all race, you're fine. Everyone must get a fair share.
Everybody gets a fair share.
Because if you can laugh at other race, you must be able to laugh at your own race first.
Yeah. But the things that you say,
Yes.
are they okay because you're saying them, or are they okay because you're saying it on stage?
I think it's my years of experience and my years of my style of comedy, and I think it's okay for me to say it. I'm making fun of everything, and everything I say is they can relate.
one grandmother, she want to scare the grandson. She can point at me and call me Apu Nene. Someone walking past me, she look at this grandson. You don't want him like that, huh? Like that Apu Nene catch you.
This is what people used to call us Apu Nene. This is what people used to call me. I do not make up stories. Most of it is truth. And I think if you cannot accept the truth, that's when you become offended. The truth hurts.
But outside, they would get offended by this, right?
They're definitely offended.
Yeah.
If it's a stranger saying it.
Has anyone ever been offended in your show?
I'm sure they have.
How do you deal with it?
I would say we can leave the club. Because you don't have to come. I never put a gun on your head to sit here and watch me.
Okay. By telling all these racist jokes, aren't you perpetuating all the stereotypes?
No, I'm not. Because this whole thing has been going on for years and years of history that this is how people to connect. Because my age group for that come and watch me is from 18 to 80. So this stereotype is for them, for the oldies to agree and the young to understand that our life has not been that easy.
If I was the government, anybody make racist statement, I make you do community service. You make fun of Malay, 1 month you cut onion at the void deck. You make fun of Indian, 1 month, traffic control, Serangoon Road on a Sunday. You make fun of Chinese, 1 month, Hungry Ghost Month, you perform. No pay.
Kumar's popularity shows that he clearly gets away with quite a lot of what many would consider racist. So where do we draw the line between what is acceptable and what isn't? I've often been told that if you want to know the general sentiment of Singapore, you speak to taxi drivers. After all, that is the profession that meets and interacts with people from all walks of life.
So, Uncle, you think you are racist or not?
No. Why? Actually, 我没有种族歧视。OK， 我们新加坡都是多元种族的社会嘛，对不对？在我们的同行里面，我们都有一些不喜欢跟喜欢的乘客。
Do you choose your customer depending on what race they are?
是有的。最不大喜欢的就是印度族的朋友，他们喜欢在车里面大声的谈话啦。车费方面多一点的话，他们都会很争执。在华族方面的 normally 都是 OK， 但是尤其住在一些公益上的那些华族啊，就会有一些态度上的让我们觉得他比较跟我们不同这样。我们最喜欢就是马来族朋友，他们从来都不会给予我们任何上的麻烦，钱他们很愿意去付出任何的那个得是费，从来都不会有 bargain。
Interestingly, despite their jokes and preferences, neither Kumar nor Uncle Stephen the taxi driver see themselves as racist.
The Oxford English Dictionary defines racism as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. I need to find out if people think of themselves as racist. I'm going to ask people some questions, and the app is going to instantly compute their racism score. You think you could take a survey about race and racism and racial harmony? Yeah. Okay, so you want to hit the submit button? Hit the submit? Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, it says you're 0% racist.
I'm not racist.
You're not racist.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so your results show you're 0% racist. Are you surprised by this?
No, it's expected.
Expected. Okay.
It should be 0 given the way we were educated.
Are you just putting in the correct answers because I'm asking you these questions?
Definitely not.
You really believe this?
Yes.
You are 0% racist.
Yeah.
You expect this result?
Yeah, of course.
Do you judge people on the basis of their race?
No, definitely not.
How about your result? Are you surprised by the result?
No, I'm not.
So you think this is an accurate reflection?
Should be a bit lesser, like 30 instead of 36.
You think you have some racism?
It's in us, we are prejudgmental over certain people, like the exterior, you know, but we try to minimize this, prejudgmental.
Okay. Apparently most people aren't racist at all. I wonder if that's the truth, or are they being politically correct?
As part of this documentary, Channel News Asia worked with the Institute of Policy Studies on a comprehensive nationwide survey. The survey asked Singaporeans what they thought about our race relations. The results are revealing. Almost all respondents respect people from all races and believe everyone should be treated equally. Yet interestingly, about half have negative stereotypes about other races. They think that some races are more violent, less friendly, lazier, or more likely to get into trouble than other races. And 33% don't trust people from some races. So on the surface, we believe in racial harmony, and many sincerely don't think they are racist. Yet the survey reveals that some people still hold on to racial prejudices.
Would you describe yourself as racist?
A little bit.
A little bit? Do you think you judge people on race when you see them?
Yes, sometimes I do, yes. There are here. I'm being honest here.
The older generation, they pass on some negative comments since they were young, and then maybe this a little bit things that, bring up the stereotypes.
What does this say about the harmony Singapore is proud of? There is one guy I really need to speak to. The man behind various groundbreaking research on race in Singapore over the past few years, Dr. Matthew Matthews.
Matthew, you've been researching race in Singapore for some time. What do you think the current status is for racial harmony here?
When you talk to people who are studying this area, then they kind of raise issues like the kind of harmony they say, is that it's kind of superficial. When you dig down inside it, you realize that stereotypes are there, there's some kind of prejudices which are still there. People don't really care to understand the other very much.
Do you think Singaporeans really care that this is an issue?
It's not the biggest issue for them. As long as life can go on, people are fairly pragmatic.
So do you think the superficial racial harmony that you talk about is causing problems now? Or are you worried about problems in the future?
I think there's generally that fear that we're still not at that stage where we can be frank about issues. People have to worry that, hey, you start opening up the box, you don't know what will come out and whether we are ready to actually speak about it.
Have you had a question directed at you that caused offense?
People have asked a lot of questions when it comes to Indians, for instance, about drinking habits, for instance. I don't drink, but...
I do, I'll make up for you.
So whenever I don't drink, they don't drink, then they say, oh, I thought all Indians drink it. Many of you... And of course, the idea is they drink to excess. When I got married, first thing people ask, make sure you don't beat up your wife. These are...
Was that your wife asking? No,
well, goodness, it's not my wife.
Do you feel offended?
I think you can choose not to be offended, and I treat it as that people, legitimately have questions.
It's really not been easy making a documentary about race. You've been doing this for some time. Has it been difficult?
It was difficult because I remember writing to people and asking for interviews, and people wrote back immediately saying things like, this is a sensitive area, why are you trying to rock the boat?
I walked away from the interview feeling disturbed. If, according to Dr. Matthew Matthews, our racial harmony is superficial, does that mean there is something else beneath the surface? Brewing tensions, suppressed racism, anxiety about our peace and progress? If there is, that could be a major problem. In December last year, a Malay man, Sunny Sarip, encountered racism in a cinema. A Chinese boy of about 9 years old, seated next to him, said, "I don't want to sit beside Malay people." Sunny Sarip moved away, but he talked about it on Facebook. His post went viral overnight, but after a few days, Sunny took the post down. When we first approached Sunny for an interview, he didn't want to be identified.
But we've persuaded him, and I'm glad he's changed his mind. And I'm glad he's here today to speak up against racism. Your Facebook post went viral.
Unexpectedly, yes.
Did the post cause you trouble?
I received some threatening messages, unfortunately. Some people were dissecting my post and pointing out flaws. And some people offered to give me tickets to watch Star Wars again. It's like there are those who will say, we must find that person and lynch him, make a witch hunt out of him.
On the day this happened, you didn't say anything to the boy?
I just wanted to just tell him off straight then and there. It's like, if you cannot sit beside me, you get out of here.
So why didn't you do that?
Because I figured I didn't want to create a scene. I didn't want to ruin everyone else's enjoyment of the movie.
Is it worse because a kid said it? Or would it be worse if an adult said it?
I feel like it's worse that a kid said it. I believe that kids follow their parents, and I don't believe that kids are born racist. Until it's really up to the parents and or their surroundings that teach them to be racist.
Do you think we find it difficult to talk about race and problems with race?
Yes, it is very difficult to talk about this.
Why?
It's really a sensitive issue. You have to be very careful not to say the wrong things, not to say things that might offend other people.
Sunny's post isn't the only one that has gone viral. Recently, a Malay woman also took to social media after being discriminated against in a job interview at Halal Bakery Prima Deli.
Makes me wonder if these are one or two people being mean and racist.
Or are they saying out loud what everyone else thinks? The Channel News Asia IPS survey on race reveals that 20% of Singaporeans don't consider it racist not to hire someone based on their race. 27% don't think it is racist to comment that people of a particular race are normally lazy, dirty, or too money-minded. And shockingly, 35% of the respondents think it is not racist if they refuse to share a seat with a person of another race.
To me, this is racist, but some people think these behaviors are quite acceptable. Clearly, Singaporeans are quite divided on their understanding of where the boundaries are.
So on the surface, we believe in racial harmony. Yet the survey reveals that some people harbor racist beliefs, and some don't know when they're being racist. Does this result in fault lines within society? Do these lines create an us versus them? I'm going to do an experiment with 10 participants. I'm going to ask them a series of questions, and they're going to step forward or backwards depending on how they identify with the statements. The participants are of different races. With this experiment, I want to find out if some people enjoy more privilege than others, simply because of their race.
I think privilege is having it easier than others.
I don't see that I'm enjoying a special privilege in Singapore. I feel that it's pretty equal.
Privilege to me means that someone has a form of stability. It means that they get permanence.
I never had to think about privilege growing up, and that in itself was privilege for me.
Okay, we'll start with the easy questions. In the last month, I have tried to get food and the person spoke to me in a language I don't understand. Step back if this has happened to you. Your supervisor has always been the same race as you. Step forward if you agree. You've done something well and you've been congratulated because you're a credit to your race. Take a step back if this has happened to you. I have been ashamed to go out of my house in my traditional clothes. If it's never happened to you, step forward. I have never been the only person of my race in the room. If you agree with this, you step forward. Your friends in conversation have used the words "you people," meaning your whole race. Take a step back if this has happened to you. Someone's made fun of you at school because of the color of your skin. Step back.
This is your final position. Those in front enjoy more societal privileges than those standing at the back.
When the experiment ended, I turned around and there were people who were kind of close to me and there were people who were like really far back as well. And I just felt like, whoa, shit, there's so much difference in our experiences.
I didn't expect to land right at the back. I thought I'd be somewhere in between. I've never been able to discuss race issues with anyone. Unless you are very close friends, you can discuss about it. But someone who's a stranger, you sort of like accept it and deal with it. You don't discuss.
I ended up being the last one and it feels weird. It's actually quite surprising. I would think that someone who is of a more minority than I am, like the Indian lady, would be behind me.
I do feel lousy to see that after so many years of racial harmony, somehow I feel that inside us, people do feel that they've been discriminated. The Chinese might not realize it. After this test, I can see that there's quite a gap still.
When I saw the gap, it just hit me that I think I realized that, okay, I've neglected this as an important issue. Like, it's real, you know. It's not just something that I read online.
Now, the S League is one of the few places in Singapore where the Chinese are not a majority. In this team, there are 18 Malays, 2 Chinese, and 1 Indian. I joined the boys in a game to find out what the race dynamics are like when the minority becomes the majority. So on the field, you're the minority. How does that make you feel?
Right now, there's not really a problem, but back then, it was really very, very tough and a big problem for me because I feel inferior, then obviously left out of place.
Why are you left out?
Because we are the minorities, you know, and they are the majorities. So definitely we'll left our place then. Doesn't feel good.
Doesn't feel good?
Yeah. And I always want to be part of them, but it's so difficult.
So what do you do?
So what I do? Go back home and cry.
No.
But it's try to blend in with them, hang out with them more, understand them more. Then slowly, racist humor comes in and just accept it. I cannot be angry, and over time, I feel I'm part of them.
So they make racist jokes about you?
Yeah, definitely.
How do you feel about that?
Definitely get mad at times lah, but I have to get used to it because I want to be part of them.
So how did it make you feel when you heard him say that when he started in football he felt left out?
That is expected from the Chinese.
Expected? Why expected?
Because majority in football is all Malays. Then a few Chinese only. Think like when like every day we talk to Malay, think he understand what we're saying, but then he only cannot talk Malay back to us.
I see. Most of the time you talk Malay to each other?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you speak Malay?
Yeah, I picked it up over the years because like mostly like teammates are Malay and all that.
So you pick up some Malay also?
Yeah, I have to pick it up some Malays lah.
So now,
So that when they disturb him or talk bad about him, then he knows.
why are there so few Chinese in the team?
Think maybe not a lot of them like can play soccer.
You think they are not skilled at soccer?
They always say we are chicken hand duck feet.
Chicken hand duck feet?
Yeah, that's why.
Why do you think there's so few Chinese playing soccer?
Well, our parents also don't support us Chinese playing football because of the future, because of education first. They always portray that Malays likes to play football and have fun and doesn't really study. So for us Chinese, we have to study hard and everything, just build the economy for Singapore, that's all. Yeah.
You agree or not? Is that why there's so few Chinese in soccer?
Yeah, I agree.
Outside, you are the majority.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel when you're a majority that you have a privilege? Did you realize that before you became a minority in football?
In outside, definitely I enjoy being a majority because everywhere you see it's just Chinese and hardly you see Malays around. Let's say when I become a minority in the majority, right? Definitely I feel inferior. I will just keep to myself. Yeah.
But do you think the Chinese, when they're in the majority, they feel privileged?
Definitely yes.
Yes.
Privilege isn't merely about money and status. It is more than that. Whenever there's an ethnic majority, the majority will always enjoy privilege, because the majority defines the norm for everyone else. In Singapore, we are 3/4 Chinese.
The majority do enjoy some privileges, from life's simple pleasures like having more food choices to deeper issues with jobs. This is what's called the privilege gap.
Sometimes it's difficult to separate privilege from racism. According to the same survey, 1 in 2 minorities believe that the lighter your skin color, the less prejudice and discrimination you'll face. To bolster against racial discrimination at the workplace, Singapore has put in place the Fair Employment Practices Guidelines to prevent racial discrimination. The Tripartite Alliance for Fair Employment Practices, or TAFEP, told me that they don't see a rise in race-based complaints in the workplace, and discriminatory cases tend to be isolated rather than institutional. But I want to find out from the minorities, do they feel systematically excluded? Zulkifli Baharudin is a former nominated Member of Parliament who has been outspoken on race issues. When I met him, he brought me to a musola, a transient Muslim prayer space.
So why are we meeting here?
Well, a couple of residents have put on their Facebook, they expressed concern that places like these temporary prayer places that crop up during Ramadan is going to disappear, especially because there's a new mosque coming up. So I think it's created some reaction as to places like this where they get together every Ramadan is going to disappear, and whether it will affect their practices, race, culture, religion.
You think it's a...
Yeah, it is.
Huh? Come, please. In the Malay community, are there questions about inclusion or exclusion with the other races?
Malays have progressed the last 50 years, absolute terms. There's no doubt about it. But in relative terms, when you compare with the Chinese and even the Indians, I think they're far behind. The Malay Muslim community in Singapore live a very different life. Not exclusive entirely, but different. They've chosen a more balanced life between recreation, between career and work, between society and religion is quite important. The kind of emphasis, priorities may differ with the Chinese and Indians. That's a given fact, and we have to accept that fact, and you have a price to pay for that.
Some would argue that actually we're far better off in terms of multiracial harmony than almost anywhere else in the world. But yet we want more. Why is that?
We can say we are far better off, but I take a very different view. I still say that we are far more vulnerable now than ever before. Never say you have arrived.
Do you think there's racism directed against the Malays?
I'm convinced there's no systemic institutional racism, but there's certainly prejudices, biasness, perception, which borders on racism. So I think every person in Singapore, Malays included, must guard against their personal biasness and prejudice, which is inherent in the way they lead their lives and the way they do their work, such that it doesn't be interpreted becomes racism at an institutional level.
So we all have our inherent racial prejudices. And I believe one way to confront our internal bias is if we talk about it. But talking about race has always made people uncomfortable.
In Singapore, the Sedition Act prohibits any action that instills ill will among the races. It doesn't stop us talking about it. In fact, its purpose is to guarantee a common safe space to allow meaningful dialogue.
The Sedition Act sets boundaries on what we say. But I believe that we can still have meaningful conversations within those boundaries. So how do I get more people to start talking about race? Every Vesak Day, I would be invited to be guest of honor at the celebrations. And sometimes I'll be the only Indian among the Chinese.
Years ago, the people who founded this nation understood how difficult peace and harmony between races and religions and languages would be. And I don't think they would have imagined over 50 years how much progress and peace and harmony we were able to achieve. In Singapore, we've always said that multiracial harmony is not a given. It's important to exercise sensitivity. I've made the same point myself in many, many speeches.
On the surface, this exercise in caution has worked really well. But has it had an unintended effect? Has it made people afraid to talk about race? In a rigorous nationwide survey on race relations conducted by Channel News Asia and the Institute of Policy Studies, it was discovered that more than half of Singaporeans think it is hard to discuss race issues. Over 6 in 10 people think it would offend someone or that it causes unnecessary tension. Half also believe that minorities are getting too sensitive when race issues are broached. I encountered these fears myself. I found on Facebook many interest groups set up by Singaporeans standing up against racism. I write to the administrators of the various Facebook groups requesting to talk to them. But my attempts are met by a wall of silence. Even promises of anonymity didn't help. People have a lot to say about race among their friends, online, but they're reluctant to move the conversation from Facebook into the real world. If they don't want to openly acknowledge that racism is a problem, how are we going to do something about it? Bertha Henson is the editor of online news portal, The Middle Ground. She has written several articles about race. I want to get her take on whether it'll be difficult to get people to talk about race.
So Bertha, what race are you?
I hate it when people ask me that because I always say that I don't have a race. If there's any, it's 400 meters.
400 meters?
Yeah. I really do not like that question at all.
Okay. So the act of asking the question is a little bit offensive.
I just find it disconcerting. That why do you want to know, you see?
Right.
Does it matter to you what race I am?
Right. Has there been any recent incidents where you think race has become a flashpoint or nearly become a flashpoint?
From what I can see now, people are getting oversensitive about race.
Too sensitive about race.
Oversensitive
about race.
you know.
Okay.
When it comes to comments which they don't like, they're immediately being cast in racist terms.
Right.
I think we're very thin-skinned in that respect, you know.
In the media, do you think there are unspoken rules or unwritten rules about how race is dealt with?
When it comes to crime and clashes, don't put the race in neon lights. We have to make some editing judgments. Do we even want to report it in the first place? And if you do want to get in the system, then how do you want to put it across to the system? Race issues are actually very sexy.
Is that right?
Yes, of
Is
course.
that right?
Because we're also primeval at heart, you know. When it comes to race, everybody has an opinion, you know. So you write about race, you'll always get you an audience. But that can't be it. The editor's job must be to ascertain that this commentary is worth it, it's worthwhile, there's something new to say, and even if you get some people's hackles up, it's still okay.
Would you call this self-censorship?
Self-censorship. Yeah, I think I would. I would call it self-censorship. And I think it's self-censorship for a very good cause.
A good cause?
Yes.
So you think you've been complicit in a good cause for self-censorship?
Complicit in a good cause. That's a nice way of putting it. I guess, especially the last 4 years, now that I'm doing more social media work, I can see there are what I call people who are insane and inane.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are too many of them with a loudspeaker.
Yes.
So I would be quite careful, you know, to raise such matters in the open without framing it properly.
I see. Has our emphasis on being polite and sensitive to others led to a new unspoken rule? Never say anything bad about another race, otherwise you're racist. In August 2014, a Malay woman abused her 4-year-old son because he couldn't count properly. The abuse lasted for 2 years until he died. And in those 2 years, no one spoke up. Are people afraid to speak up in case they offend a neighbor of a different race? I'm worried that's the reason why so many domestic abuse cases take a long time to come to light. So if you see your neighbors having a fight, will you go and stop them fighting?
Just apologize for their means anything can settle, we settle it. Don't make a big problem for that.
If they are a different race from you?
Different ways cannot settle, call police.
Call police?
Yeah.
You will not be, you feel that it's not right for you to go
Yeah,
in?
that's correct.
If you see two of your neighbors having a fight,
Okay.
what would you do?
I would probably call the police
Straight away?
first. Yeah, I think so. I'll call the police.
If they're a different race from you, you'd still do the same thing?
I think if they were from the same race as me, it would be slightly easier.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I spoke to a lot of people. About half of them said that race matters in some way. Sometimes it's about language, and sometimes it's about whether the person will take offense. The Channel News Asia IPS survey asked people if they were afraid of being called racist, if they called out bad behavior in a person of another race. The survey results reveal about 1 in 4 is afraid they'd be labeled racist if they speak up when they see someone of a different race doing something wrong, or intervene when a different race is seen mistreating a woman, or stepping in when they hear shouting and crying from the home of a neighbor of a different race. There seems to be a misplaced caution when it comes to other races. As chairman of Onepeople.sg, it is my team's job to start the conversation on race. So far, it has been harder than I thought. I've encountered many walls of silence, but I think race issues are too important to be left unsaid. In multiracial Singapore, we've always been careful what we say about race. But I think it's time we start having more honest, open conversations. Because I believe that is one way to confront our inherent biases. Any national conversation on race has to begin in our schools, with our young students. Okay, it's 21st of July. I'm at Townsville Primary School for Racial Harmony Day. There's an air of celebration and fun, cultural performances and skits.
During a break, I speak to some 9-year-olds to find out if Racial Harmony Day has created an impression.
What's Racial Harmony Day about?
Many races do together and learn about their culture.
Do you remember last year's Racial Harmony Day?
No, not really.
So what did you all do for last year's Racial Harmony Day?
I put henna.
Eating putu-mayam. That's what you did last year. Okay. Anything else you remember from last year? Do you talk about other races when you're at home?
No.
Your parents talk about other races?
No.
No? Do you talk about race in your class?
Just today.
Just today?
Yes.
Just today only?
Yes.
So the
International Friendship Day.
International Friendship Day and today. The rest of the time?
Not that often.
Okay. Do you have a best friend?
Yes.
What race is your best friend?
Indian. Chinese.
Indian. He's
Yeah.
an Indian Christian.
Yes.
I see.
Chinese and Malay.
Why is your best friend Chinese?
Because we have a lot of things in common.
So have you heard people say things about your race?
I'm very dark. I have lots of hair and they like to eat me because I'm like chocolate.
How does that make you feel?
I feel a bit angry and I feel it's a bit funny.
What about you, Zoe? Have you heard people say things about your race?
Yes. It's usually said by Indians and Malays. Because I'm the type that is very, very pale. That is like born very white.
Yeah.
Then they say that I like look very pale and then I don't look nice.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel a little upset. I don't like to be insulted. Sometimes I just like shout and scream because I usually can't control my temper.
How about you, Pravi?
I'm like a bit too dark. People say my culture is bad.
How do you feel when you hear them say things like this?
The good things I feel like very proud. Bad things I feel like why I'm in this culture like that.
Their best friends are the same race. They don't talk about these issues at home. Once a year, they come to school, we have Racial Harmony Day. But what they remember is the fun, the food, the celebration, the costumes. Is that enough? What about the deeper issues and the challenges and the problems? When are they going to have an opportunity to understand those? The Channel News Asia IPS survey found that 43% of parents do not tell their children about what might offend other races. But what worries me most is that 41% of parents do not tell their children that racism is bad. Race has always been too difficult for polite conversation, but I think we need to start the conversation, not just on Racial Harmony Day, not just among people of the same race, and not only in schools. Dr. Kenneth Paul Tan has researched and written widely about race and ethnicity in Southeast Asia. I hope he can tell me how we can get the conversation going.
Do you think our harmony is superficial? Yes, I think that our harmony so far has been easy harmony. We haven't really dealt with difficult questions. If we're very politically correct, we're repressed, we don't want to deal with it, but it annoys us and it gnaws from the inside, right? And we don't really want to talk about it because it's scary stuff.
What can we do as individuals or as a people to move this forward in terms of harmony, deeper understanding?
We need to have a public sphere where people can talk honestly, in good faith, about real problems that attend the condition of being in a culturally diverse society. A certain kind of honesty, a certain kind of good faith is required for this. But just as importantly, I think we need to have information, because the worst thing that can happen if we kind of encourage a lot of discussion in the public sphere in the absence of data is a lot of myth-making, a lot of half-truths, untruths even, that get circulated. For a long time, this data has been treated in a very sensitive way. Perhaps we need to have a real mindset shift about that.
You know, you talked about having increased discussion with statistics, public space, but this could go badly wrong, right? I mean, we could go really badly wrong. This could explode in our face. Yeah. And what if it does? What do we do then?
This is also true in the absence of data, right? Because you can't contain discussion, you can't contain speculation, you can't contain conspiratorial...
It's happening anyway.
It happens anyway, right? It's going to happen in cyberspace, whatever. So it's better to flood the space with good quality data and see how people use it.
Do you think we'll ever get to a truly harmonious society?
I don't think we'll ever reach there, right?
Why not?
Because there's always going to be inequalities of various kinds, right? If you were to replace the Chinese with another group, but they inhabit the majority, it's quite likely that the same types of privilege might operate there too. What's important for us is not so much about thinking that there is a utopian endpoint and that we're going to get there, but to constantly subject our society to self-critique, a certain kind of self-awareness.
It's a bit of a wake-up call to think that we'll never have perfect racial harmony. But from all the people I've met, I know we'll never stop trying to build a more resilient, deeper racial harmony that can withstand anything that life throws at us. Now that we've made this documentary, was it what you expected? Did you expect me to be more provocative in those conversations? I could have gone further, but would I have offended you? When we first embarked on making this documentary, I wasn't sure if we were ready for a show like this.
So what surprises me most about this film is that it got made and you're watching it.
I realize after speaking to many people that talking about race openly doesn't mean we have to offend. Rather, it means we have to be prepared not to take offense.
Only then can we have meaningful conversations that reach for that deeper racial harmony we all want.
So I've started the conversation. Are we ready to take this further?